Everybody, welcome back to round 6 of Grand Prix Minneapolis. Sam Black on your left, Martin Deng on your right. A couple of the best players in the world here, both from a playing standpoint, obviously, but in Sam especially one of the best deck builders, in the history of the game.
Yeah, and Sam, with a non-traditional strategy for him, a really kind of focused green-red beatdown deck, really heavy on the green for Gigantosaurus, amongst other things, Goreclaw and Colossal Majesty, and Martin Deng with a white-blue deck that's similar to some of the other white-blue strategies that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, Resco Swiftclaw there, not matching up too well against the Goblin and its Goblin token. A couple 1/1s for Sam to trade there. Yeah. Willing to commit one to the attack and one back. That makes sense.
Yeah, and a Resco Swiftclaw is a card that we've mentioned being particularly weak in sealed deck, and that's because all of the colors have access to ways to punish you for having one toughness creatures, and obviously we see a Resco Swiftclaw looking pretty impotent here against the Instigator.
Yeah, not exactly what you want. So Martin with 4 lands passes back. Sam Black has, you can see that Colossal Majesty. So if he can find a creature with power 4 or greater, he will get to draw a card every turn, and we've definitely seen Colossal Majesty do some work so far today.
Yeah, I love Colossal Majesty. This is a card that is going to win Sam a late game. So it immediately gives him kind of inevitability as soon as he can kind of stick a 4 power creature. So Martin wants to try to get the game over with before we reach that part of the game.
Yeah, and, kind of rough for him in that sense that he didn't have anything to do with 4 after passing the turn. Angel of the Dawn for 5, though, that's pretty good. Allows the Swiftclaw to get on in there. So takes Sam Black down to 16, but Vinemare hits the board. Can't be blocked by black creatures. 5/3 hexproof. Angel serves in for Martin. Well, he's doing what he wants to do here, and here's Horizon Scholar. That is it's the first time I've seen this on camera today, but this is a very, very powerful flyer for blue. 4/4, 6 mana, but the real kicker is when it enters the battlefield, scry 2. So this is kind of the perfect time of the game with 6 mana where you don't want any more lands, and Horizon Scholar does a great job of digging you to exactly what you want in this circumstance. Of course, Sam Black with his own engine drawing cards with that Colossal Majesty.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about Sam's deck is that he's going to want to turn this into kind of a pure race situation here. He doesn't have access to things like Plummet or Electrify, some of those cards that could easily take out larger flyers. He has things like Rabid Bite and Meteor Golem, but only really a few hard removal spells for 3 toughness or greater flyers.
Yeah, you're right. He's going to want to race. He's all in on the ground here. Talons of Wildwood, +1/+1, and Trample to that Vinemare, taking advantage of both the fact that Martin stepped out, but as well as the hexproof. So, all right, look at that. Martin offers the trade. Now, it's not quite a 2-for-1 because Talons of Wildwood, of course, can be brought back to your hand from your graveyard for 3 mana.
Yeah, interesting combat step right there. Sam offering the trade with the Vinemare, and Martin decides, I can't just take 6 to the face. This is my one chance to get Vinemare off the table.
Yeah, and that's a post-combat Blanchwood armor from Sam Black. That gives a creature +1/+1 for each force you control, so +3/+3 at the moment to that Goblin. Looking pretty impressive for that 2-drop.
Little interesting there. So Blanchwood armor on the Vinemare wouldn't have done a lot of good because it would have just allowed Martin to double block with the Swiftclaw and still take it down.
Mm-hmm.
So this Blanchwood armor post-combat is actually a very smart play because it allows Sam to continue drawing cards off of his Colossal Majesty. So nice play by Sam there to kind of understand the way Martin's blocks would have lined up.
Yeah, absolutely. It works out very well for him, and Martin gets... Well, that's pretty good right there. Uses the Transmogrifying Wand. So kind of a complicated card, a lot to it, but essentially it comes into play with 3 counters, and then you can remove a counter, destroy a creature, and you turn it into an Ox. So, 2/4 Ox, not a bad card, especially against, say, an Resco Swiftclaw, but not exactly drawing you cards off Colossal Majesty either. So that was pretty important for Martin Deng, who also served in the air with a flyer.
Yeah, and even more clear now why Martin wanted to block with Horizon Scholar on the Vinemare. He figured this wand can take care of basically everything except for a hexproof creature. So even though I have this really powerful flyer here, I'm happy to get it into combat since I'm so comfortable in the post-Vinemare part of the game.
Yeah, this has been pretty interesting from both sides. So Sam, well, we talked about him needing answers to flyers, doesn't have Plummet. Draconic Disciple isn't bad. I mean, 7 mana, you can make a dragon if he gets an opportunity with that wand in play, but another Horizon Scholar from Martin Deng who's just all over the skies here while knocking Sam down to 3. But looks like Sam might have an opportunity to make a dragon of his own.
Yeah,
might just turn into an Ox.
Well, interestingly enough, the wand can only be used at sorcery speed.
Yeah.
So Meteor Golem, obviously a better answer.
Meteor Golem, pretty good. 7-mana, 3/3, destroy target non-land permanent. Yeah, that card does some work in all games, but particularly in Sealed.
I wonder if we'll see Martin use the wand on the Disciple while Sam's tapped out,
right?
Rather than allowing him to untap with it, because once he untaps with it, you can't really put your Angel into combat against it because you can't use the wand to remove the dragon in combat.
Yeah. So,
ooh, nice.
Divination, pretty good off the top here as both players have traded a lot of resources. So talk about Meteor Golem as looks like Sam going to fall down to 4 here, but how important is Meteor Golem just to, as an uncommon that any deck can play?
Yeah, I mean, Paulo had mentioned earlier his love for Meteor Golem, and I share it, certainly. Destroy target non-land permanent. It's such a powerful triggered ability in Sealed deck where, you never know exactly what kind of threats you're facing. You're facing threats as diverse as the entire format. So
right.
To be able to put that on a colorless creature, it has a reasonable body attached to it, 3/3 remaining relevant on that part of the game, and then obviously with ways to reuse it, just an incredibly strong card.
Yeah, and of course in Sealed you can be reasonably confident of the game going a little longer to actually reach that 7 mana. So, all right, that said, it was a good answer to that second Horizon Scholar, but Martin keeps the pressure coming, and Aven Windmage has joined the board. He's still got that Transmogrifying Wand he can use on his own turn. So Sam, it's going to be interesting. If he wants to pass the turn to try to make a dragon, say, in combat, well, that opens himself up to, those cards that Martin just drew off that Divination. So pretty tricky, especially Sam Black now down to 4 life. This game could end in a hurry if he can't navigate, this next turn properly.
Yeah, a little surprised that Martin chose not to use the wand on the Draconic Disciple while he had that window there. But, that could be indicating that he has something in his hand where he actually wants Sam to spend 7 mana and go for making a dragon and trying to block, So
right, disperse
or
something
like that would just be lethal. So,
ooh, there's a dragon.
Wow,
Spark-Ton Dragon for Sam Black. He'll pay the extra 3 mana. That'll take down the Angel of the Dawn, and just like that, Martin Dang has him down to 4 life. But Sam Black's got all the creatures now. 1 Aven Windmage, and there is a window here for Martin, right? If he can deal with the dragon, which we know he can with the wand, and then force through enough damage to get there. So Divination, that'll pump the Aven Windmage up to a 3/3, so close. Wow, and there's a Take Vengeance. That's 2 triggers. There's the wand to take down the dragon. That will allow 4/4 Aven Windmage to get in there. He had a window, and you know what? He jumped on right through it. Takes it out. That was a back and forth game.
Yeah, Martin's deck looks nice, huh? Yeah. It's just a really kind of the nice version of blue-white with all the selection from 2 Divinations and 2 Horizon Scholars that he played that game. Let him get to kind of the nice part of his deck. He looks like he has answers in the form of Take Vengeance and Transmogrifying Wand, so just a really nice, consistent blue-white deck.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly what he did with those Horizon Scholars, but I'm sure those scries came in very handy. All right, so while the players shuffle up for Game 2, we're going to take some Fact or Fiction here. You ready for this? All right. Fact or fiction? Cards like Sleep ensure that even when you think you've got the game locked up, you actually haven't.
Yeah, that's fact. And I think one of the impacts of things like that is, we talk about it frequently, once you've turned the corner and you now have the lead and you feel like you're starting to put the screws to your opponent, getting the game over with as quickly as possible has a lot of value, because every draw step that you give your opponent is a chance that they could draw Sleep or Cleansing Nova or Inspired Charge if they're going wide. One of these cards that can steal games from kind of the the snatch victory from the clutches of defeat. So so yes, I think it's absolutely fact. Sleep is a card that you need to be aware of at all times when playing this format.
Yeah, Sleep is just absolutely terrifying because it doesn't just steal 2 attack steps from you. It also completely lowers your defenses for people to swing in for a huge hit. All right, Sleep, absolutely an uncommon bomb here. All right, next fact or fiction. Switcheroo. It's time to give him the old switcheroo. Don't worry, you can give him the new switcheroo. Works just the same in M19. Yeah, I don't. Fact or fiction? That's
for me, it's fiction. So so I think that there are definitely some really attractive creatures to gain control of. Switcheroo is amongst the weakest control magic effects that they've ever printed, where you gain control of one of your opponent's creatures. One of the things that Switcheroo had in the past was really it was always in formats where there were easy ways to generate very small and kind of incidental tokens. There are fewer of those in M19, so you can generate, say, a night token, for
Right.
example, but then you're trading a night token for like a 4/4. That's not necessarily worth the card. So sometimes Switcheroo looks brilliant. Obviously, we saw Matt Nass use a great
Right.
great effect to take the Wind Rider Sphinx. If you take an Elder Dragon Legend, you're going to feel pretty brilliant. But a lot of times Switcheroo, you're not actually going to even get a full card value by just slightly upgrading one of your creatures.
Yeah, it's one of those cards I think we talked about earlier. It just has this huge gulf between when it's good, it's great, but it's not always good.
Right. One of the things that it's a nice splash card a lot of the time. For example, let's say you're playing one of those maybe green black decks and you've got a bunch of Elvish Rejuvenators that have already done their job,
Right.
and you want to use for them. Well, Switcheroo and going to get your opponent's best creature. That's a really nice use for your kind of incidental 1/1 creature.
Yeah, it definitely makes for good TV, that's for sure. Some fun moments with Switcheroo.
Good picture.
Yeah. All right, so back down to the floor here. Sam Black down a game, squaring off against Martin Deng, the Pro Tour of, the winner of Pro Tour Dragon Sitar here a couple years ago. Definitely hoping to add to that when we go to the Pro Tour this week. Both of these players part of some great teams, and this is a nice warm up before then. So
both players opting for the Magic branded T-shirt, so they're getting that branding in right now. Martin,
very important,
and this is almost like a one of those situations from Big with the switch bodies, where Martin Deng, who's a Pro Tour champion with red aggro, has the white blue kind of like control Flyers deck, and Sam Black, who wouldn't be caught dead playing red aggro in a professional tournament, has a red-green beatdown deck here in this limited event. So kind of a switch of roles.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Sam Black with Goblin tokens before. I've just never seen him not sacrifice to a Goblin Bombardment.
Right.
So, yeah, of course, Sam Black known for, and I love the decks he builds. He has a way to take what look like really bad cards on their face and find some pretty interesting decks for him. But I don't know. I mean, how creative can you get in this sealed format?
Well, we just saw Sam Black play a post-combat Blanchwood armor,
Right.
Blanchwood armor in red-green, so which is about the most on-brand way for Sam Black to play red-green that I can think of.
That's true.
Pretty creative.
And you know what? It made complete sense. All right, so this game, Martin Deng up one, and here it's a mirror of the last game here. 2 Goblins for Sam Black, 3-1 for Martin Deng. That Oresco Swiftclaw did not a lot last time around, but it ended up trading with, Sam Black's 7-drop. Of course, that 7-drop had gotten plenty of value, the Meteor Golem.
Yeah, a little. It's a little interesting to me that Martin would continue to have Oresco Swiftclaw in his post-sideboard configuration in this matchup after seeing, Instigator Game 1, potentially things like Rejuvenator that are red common and red-green. So a little surprising on the draw that Martin still wants Oresco Swiftclaw, but, it does block pretty effectively against some 4/3 creatures and things of that nature.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how you see the game going, right? And you see your role. It can trade up sometimes. Fortunately, sometimes it'll trade down as well. But if he thinks he can engineer a situation where it'll be good, it makes some sense. Wow, that is quite a bit of ramp from Sam Black here. Maybe, anyways.
Sam has a very pure anti-Oresco Swiftclaw draw here.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, we talked about being creative. This is this seems pretty Sam Black version of red green right now. He's ramping. I think I caught sight of a Meteor Golem in his hand too. So he's got a lot to do with this mana as he crashes in for 3. Oresco Swiftclaw not doing anything right now. All right, 5 mana for Martin Deng. Needs a big play. Angel of the Dawn's not bad. Oresco Swiftclaw becomes a 4/2 Vigilant. Knocks Sam Black down to 16. This looks pretty similar to last game.
Yeah, and the same play pattern that we saw last game in terms of Angel of the Dawn getting Oresco Swiftclaw's toughness out of range of a trade. Mm-hmm. And we can see why it is that Martin has the Oresco Swiftclaw in his deck. He just wants a critical mass of kind of ground creatures out before he starts his big flyers.
Yeah, and speaking of ramp, how about a Goreclaw, huh? That's a pretty nice one there for Sam Black. I mean, on its face, it's a 4/3 for 4, but creature spells with power 4 or greater cost 2 less, and whenever it attacks, creatures you control power 4 or greater get +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So if Sam's got some big creatures in his hand, they are going to be into play very soon.
Interesting attack from Sam. He chooses to attack with all of his creatures and not leave one back to potentially block the Swiftclaw. He's thinking, okay, I saw how powerful your late game flyers are. I want the game over with as quickly as possible.
Right.
So I'm willing to make a putative 1/3 damage offer right now, understanding that I'm kind of leaning on you at this point in the game, and I'm threatening a pretty devastating attack with Goreclaw next turn. So interesting play from Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea that if you can get Martin Deng to a low enough life total, I mean, these 1/1s add up.
Right.
course, Horizon Scholar there for Martin Dang. We saw it last game as well. It is extremely good at stalling the board. I mean, Goreclaw is the difference this time around. So we'll see. That's land number 7 for Sam Black. Does he have an answer to the Horizon Scholar that would unlock a pretty devastating attack from him? Well, that'll do it. That, everybody, I believe, is a prodigious growth. Enchanted creature gets +7/+7 in trample.
Yeah.
That explains that last attack, and that'll do it right there.
Yeah, 12-power Trampler is usually pretty difficult to deal with, and Martin couldn't deal with it.
He just scooped him right on up. Yeah, that makes those those jump attacks make a little more sense, and just try to get in all the damage possible. Wow, just like that, we're on to a game 3 here. Well, that was very different than the first one.
Yeah, is there anything better than when you're trying to set up that huge prodigious growth turn where you slam it onto your Goreclaw and your opponent taps out for a 4/4? I mean, that's the great feeling, because you're obviously afraid of something like Disperse or something like Counter Magic, but when you get to slam it against a tapped out opponent, you know you're in for a good combat.
Yeah, and you can see the players down there laughing about it. I'm sure Martin was just like, "Yep, that'll do it." That's prodigious growth, pretty fun. Pretty fun way to get that game going. So now, having seen that from Martin and seeing the Blanchwood armor, I mean, does Martin have the tools available to him to try to keep Sam from just going over the top like that?
Yeah, so Martin does have access to Invoke the Divine in his sideboard. He may have kind of brought it in anyway, having seen Blanchwood armor in game 1, as well as things like Meteor Golem, a less attractive target.
Right.
So Sam's deck actually also has a Suspicious Bookcase and some other things as well. Obviously, when you combine that with the brutal prodigious growth, I think that you'll definitely see Martin go to the Invoke the Divine after sideboard.
Yeah, that's a kind of card that sometimes it's not great. Sometimes it can run your hand, but when it's good, you need it. It's would have certainly got him out of that situation. We'll see how game 3 plays out. Martin gets to go back on the play this time, and that certainly makes some of those expensive flyers, look a little better if you can get ahead of the prodigious growth, for instance. But yeah, Sam with the double ramp that game out of the Rejuvenators just meant that Martin Dang was far too behind on. Just on the amount of mana available to him to keep up over the course of that one. Right,
and Divination is a card that we see that Martin has 2 copies of that he used in Game 1. Another card that really benefits you being on the play. Obviously, if you have to cast it as your first card on the draw on turn 3, you're going to have to use cleanup steps. So on the play, you're going to get a chance to draw 2 cards, and then very likely be able to deploy those resources as you smooth your draw, get your 4th land, that sort of thing over the course of the game. So in addition to that, obviously being on the play, you're more likely to have the time to be able to realize the equity that you gain from the card advantage of a card like Divination. So big advantage to be on the play being the Divination deck.
Right, especially if, on turn 2, instead of having an X1, he can muster up a Grizzly Bear to keep the Goblin beatdown under control.
Right. Yeah, I would be surprised if we, given the way that Sam's deck came out that game, I would be not surprised. I would be shocked if we see an Oresco Swiftclaw into the battlefield this game.
Yeah. Well, and he also has, if he can navigate to a position where he can actually take a hit, we do know that he has access to 3 Take Vengeance. Of course, that's a sorcery that can only hit tapped creatures, so, chances are Sam Black's going to get at least a little bit of value out of those creature enchantments that we've seen. It looks like both players keep, and we're off to the races here. No 2-drop at all for Martin Dang this time around. All right. Here, Mentor of the Meek, though. Well, that's certainly a long game tool. So Mentor of the Meek, that will give him, we saw the Colossal Majesty engine for Sam Black earlier, but Mentor of the Meek is an engine itself. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters battlefield, you can pay 1 to draw a card. So not only does that block, the Salvage Rejuvenator that ramps Sam, it's going to draw Martin a lot of cards over the course of this game.
Yeah, really strong card, and when you have the lands to be able to constantly pay for the triggered ability, it can just really get out of hand.
Yeah, takes to the skies instead here with that Snapping Drake. Of course, Snapping Drake is a 3/2, won't trigger the Mentor of the Meek, but it's still pretty good on this turn. But all right, look at that. Goreclaw returns, as does an Onaki Ogre. So all right, Sam, you taking advantage of the mana discount there from Goreclaw to put a 4-2 onto the board. And, well, that'll, take a lot of time for Martin trying to get value off of that Mentor of the Meek.
Yeah, huge turn 4 from Sam, right? At 1 turn ahead because the Rejuvenator. And now because of Goreclaw's triggered ability when it attacks, Sam has very, very attractive attack step this turn, and Martin's going to be forced to play a guessing game against a ton of untapped mana. So Sam with the potentially, kind of devastating turn here, but he needs it, right? He's facing down 2 flyers, including that Herald of Faith, whose triggered ability we mentioned earlier can really be devastating in these sorts of race situations.
My gosh, look at that, though. Vinemare and Bristling Boar for Sam Black. Keep in mind, the Goreclaw ability, whenever it attacks, each creature with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample. And, Sam's got a lot of those. Oh, man, look at this.
This is gross.
This Elvish Rejuvenator was put to good use here, as was this Goreclaw. Talons of Wildwood, +1/+1 and trample onto Goreclaw. Slams in for a bunch of damage.
This is just an obscene draw. Judge, is there a judge here? Can someone do something?
We were talking about this late game value Martin Dangs has. He's going to draw a lot of cards. You know what? It doesn't matter. Sam Black needs only the cards in play.
I mean, if Martin can't get this Goreclaw off the board, he's going to be dead by about 50 on the next turn.
Oh, yeah.
So he needs to figure out something to do with this Goreclaw immediately.
Gosh, it's got to feel pretty bad when you play Herald, which is a very good 5-drop, gains you life. It's a 4/3 flyer. You have to feel pretty good about all the cards you've played if you're Martin Dang. But, yeah, Sam Black has gained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana or something off of the Goreclaw.
Right, and so Martin went 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop.
Yeah.
Is at 9 and is facing 21 damage next turn. So, you're in a situation where, Martin, again, going to be able to gain 2 life here from the Herald, but really needs to have an answer to Goreclaw immediately.
Yeah, and remember, Goreclaw gives all the creatures trample, so he doesn't just need creatures to try to interact here. He has to deal with the Goreclaw itself, and that'll do it. The Transmogrifying Wand takes out the Goreclaw. I mean, the damage has been done to an extent, but at least Martin's still alive.
Right. As long as Sam doesn't have something really powerful in his hand, Martin's really likely to get another turn.
Right.
Which is, when you have things like the Wand, like the Mentor, and like the Herald, every turn you get with them gives you an advantage. So, Martin, I wouldn't say he's stabilized, but he's starting the process of stabilization. Yep.
Yeah, so we do know that he has that Talons in his graveyard. He can return it to his hand for 3 mana. And he has the Vinemare as well. He's got the Bristling Boar, which can only be blocked by a creature. It's still a tricky combat. And here comes the team for Sam Black representing, all the combat tricks in the world in these 2 colors.
Yeah, and you know that Sam has something, right? Because Sam elected to not return Talons and play it, which was kind of the obvious level 1 play. That's pretty scary if you're Martin to know that Sam's going to be able to use his mana more effectively than that on this turn.
Wow, I guess you're happy about that. If you're Martin Dang, is able to trade off 2 of his creatures. Wow, insta. Wow, okay, so to recap that, we had a lot of combat trades. Colossal Dreadmaw for Sam Black that, seemed to be a card that would take over the board, or at least, give him another Ox off of the Wand. But Martin Dang had 2 mana open, uses that for Essence Scatter to counter the Dreadmaw. Now casts Divination, and, well, he's at 4 life, now 6, so he's not out of the woods, but in a much better spot than he was, 2 turns ago when we thought he was just dead.
Well, he still is dead. He's dead to the board as we speak, so he needs to have something else in addition to what he's done.
Well, that's, you're right, because the Talon's coming back, so we'll see if those cards he drew off Divination. Yeah, here as you expect, Talons for Sam Black, returns it, puts it in play, attacks for lethal. Will it work? Yep, that'll do it. Gets the hand. So Martin Dang at very, very close to stabilizing that, but the recursive power of the Talons coming back there to provide the last point Sam needed. So that was a match of magic right there. That was great.
Yeah, and I like Sam's deck. It's a Sam style deck. It's very, as we see, he didn't interact a lot with what Martin was doing. He just kind of wanted to do something degenerate, right? Whether it's a token deck or a multicolored deck, Sam has this, has come with a strategy, and we saw that in 2 out of 3 of those games, it really worked to perfection. Sam used the Goreclaw to accelerate out ridiculous amounts of power right away, and it was just too much to handle for Martin's tempo deck.
Yeah, that was a great match. Sam Black made so much use of Goreclaw, made use of all of the enchantments, including the recursive nature of it, to close it out. Well, that was great. Welcome back to the booth. I'm Corbin Hostler, joined by Paul Rietzel. Those are 2 great Magic players we just watched, and you know what? We have a couple more coming up for you here on this Time Walk match. Grand Prix Minneapolis. I'm Corbin Hosser. I'm joined by Paul Rietzel, and we just watched Martin Dang and Sam Black play, and it was a pretty wild match that Sam Black was able to take with some very prodigious cards.
Yeah, I mean, he just got big, and basically this is the flaw with white-blue, historically, is that you get to play the tricks, you got the cool flyers, you got that, but green-red has size, and if you can't interact with the size, you're just going to take damage in big chunks, and Sam was just too fast, too big, too brutal.
Yeah, he had quite a bit of damage, but yeah, so Sam Black punches his ticket to tomorrow. We are in the win and in rounds. That means anybody who wins on camera from here on out will play in day 2 of this event, and you know what? We have some more for you. Josh Utter-Leyton, Hall of Fame class of 2017 versus Oliver Chu, Rookie of the Year a couple years ago. So a couple great players here, and Josh starts things off with the Vampire Neonate.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun match. Oliver Chu is also playing a green-white deck. We saw Raphael Levy play green-white earlier, and one of the things that's really cool about Magic Unlimited is that even though, in theory, green-white have the same kind of theme, Oliver's deck is totally different.
Yeah.
Levy's deck was Mighty Leaps and Titanic Growths and big creatures. Oliver's is more small creatures, and then he has a lot of the aura theme. So 2 copies of Oakenform, a Blanched Wood Armor, a copy of Knightly Valor, and then he has the Key Satyr Enchanter to combo with them. Josh, a really traditional kind of black-blue control deck, lots of early game defense, lots of removal spells, and then ways to get ahead.
Yeah, and speaking of small and large creatures, Thorn Lieutenant does both. It's a 2/3 for 2. Pretty good already, but with 6 mana, it can get pretty large. +4/+4, or you can just slam a Blanchwood Armor on it on turn 3. So the great part about the Thorn Lieutenant here is if Josh Utter-Leyton has something to target it, even if it gets rid of it, Oliver will still get a token off of it. So this works out pretty well. He gets to crash in for 4 damage. Josh gets, some of it back thanks to the Vampire Neonate, but this could get out of control pretty quickly if Oliver has more force in hand.
Yeah, and Child of Night is going to be doing some hard work here, keeping Josh alive until he's able to find a third land.
Yeah, stuck on black mana only, but I guess if you're going to have 2 swamps, you can't ask for much more than a Neonate and a Child of Night. And third force for Oliver means that Thorn Lieutenant is crashing in for 5, though, and a Spider is a little bit of a brick wall there for that Child of Night.
Yeah, although if you're in Josh's boat, Josh's shoes, and you're on the back foot, seeing your opponent's 4-drop be so defensive as opposed to something like Star Crown Stag or the Bristling Boar, Josh can't be too upset about that.
Yeah, looks like it's a non-land card off the top for Josh, so not what he wants to see here. I mean, he's got a little bit of time thanks to the Neonate, thanks to the Child of Night, but that Thorn Lieutenant's not getting any less scary. Wow, look at this. He slams the Child of Night sideways, so representing something here. What do you read into this if you're sitting on Oliver's side?
Well, it's hard to know. The 2 swamps itself don't represent very much. There's only one potential combat trick that Josh can have that really does anything right now, and he actually has a copy of it right here. So that is the abnormal endurance. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to remember the card name myself, and so abnormal endurance gains Josh a bunch of life, and somehow he avoids the cleanup step again. And he's at 19, so not too bad.
That was as much as you could hope for. Abnormal Endurance was the perfect trick there. Gave his creature +2, but more importantly than that, that's enough to take out the Spider, but it comes back tapped when it dies. So he gets a 4 life swing. He gets Oliver's 4-drop off the board. Now he still has a Child of Night, and I mean, Thorn Lieutenant's not getting any less scary, but Josh is sticking around.
Still just needs that third land. I mean, it's brutal.
I don't know if we're avoiding cleanup step this time around. We'll see here. Thorn-Eyed Wolves for Oliver, 4/5. So, and now if he has a 6th land, that Thorn Lieutenant, which is already pretty big, can threaten to pump itself for 4 more and just end the game in a hurry and force some chump blocks. Yeah, Josh just forced to discard a card there. It's a 4/2 minutes for 4. That's not really going to help him in any situation here. Yeah, there's another force for Oliver. So this is getting pretty rough here. Yeah. Oh man, Knightly Valor. That's a good one. +2/+2 vigilance, and it makes a Knight token. So Oliver just, Josh had a couple turns there, had some nice places to stick around, but this door is slamming shut.
Yeah, and historically, the black-blue versus white-green matchup of these ilk these kinds of decks has heavily favored black-blue, right? Black has the color with the unconditional removal that can 2 for 1 year enchanted creatures, and then blue has obviously access to high-quality bounce spells. None of that matters if you don't have a third land, obviously. So.
Yeah. I think Josh finally might have actually hit his island there, but it doesn't matter. That hit takes him down to 2. He'll fall. Oliver Chu up a game, and that means he's 1 game away from punching his ticket into day 2. No 2-drop this time around, though.
Yeah, and worth noting that Josh choosing to draw in game 2 here. He's going to be taking the second turn. I think that he, having boarded into a black-green deck, is even more kind of grindy card advantage. Feels very, very comfortable in his matchup if he's able to get into the late games and make sure that his land draws work out okay. So just wants to make sure. And Oliver, not a very aggressive draw.
Got to feel good about this. Vampire Neonate. It's just the only card that matters right now. So, well, Josh got some mana to work with this time around. Here comes land number 4, and here comes, a Goreclaw again. Yeah, Oliver's going to read that one. It's pretty good. We saw Sam Black use it too. Probably the best effect you're ever going to see anyone use a Goreclaw 2 in a game of Sealed.
Yeah, and a lot of really nice kind of weapons in green for Josh here, including his own Thorn Lieutenant, Goreclaw, as we saw before, Runic Armasaur, a copy of Rabid Bite, Daggerback Basilisk. So, there's certainly plenty of understanding of why he would want to go to green in a post-sideboard configuration. I think, his blue you would normally think of as matching up pretty well against Oliver's deck, but he doesn't have access to things like Disperse or Exclusion Mage, so it was a different kind of blue from Josh Utter-Leyton.
Yeah, so Thornhide Wolves here for Oliver Chu. That's a 4/5. That'll block the Goreclaw, but I think Josh might have some tricks up his sleeve as he serves with the 4/3 here. That, by the way, also becomes a 5/4 on the attack, so see what Oliver opts to do here. 5/4 rather. Not sure if I misspoke there.
Already seen Abnormal Endurance. That, of course, could have access to something like Titanic Growth. So, his deck really needs a creature to stick on the battlefield for him to start, amplifying.
Well, it looks like Josh is thinking this one through here. We'll see what he ultimately ends up playing. That looks like a Hungering Hydra to me. So, of course, it's a Hydra. It's an X and a green. As all Hydras do, it comes into play with a bunch of counters. So, it's going to enter the battlefield with 4 counters. It cannot be blocked by more than 1 creature. And when it is dealt damage, put that many 1/1 counters on it. Of course, the damage is dealt first. So, if you were to deal 4 damage to the Hydra, it would still die before the ability takes effect. But any amount less than that means that Hydra is just going to get even larger, as Hydras tend to do.
Yeah, and certainly easy to understand why Josh boarded into green, given the quality of the cards that we've already talked about. You have 4 of his rares are in green, so there had to been a very strong thought to just starting with green as your initial configuration.
Yeah, and I mean that's something we've talked about. We're watching some really high level players right now, and it's really easy for average player at a GP or FNM to get, well, I have 4 rares in this color, I have to play this. But, as Josh has decided, at least in game 1, just because you have rares in certain colors doesn't mean they're the best to play.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that his green-black deck is really lacking is any form of evasion, really, right? So the blue gave him access to Aven Windmage and Snapping Drake and Frilled Sea Serpent, which can let him win those sort of board stall type games. This kind of deck is going to have to win with size and removal, and kind of just grinding Oliver into a pulp.
Right, and if you identify that in game 1, the blue-black deck is going to present certain types of threats to your opponent that they will then sideboard against, well, switching gears and playing this green-black deck can kind of fix that. Well, that'll fix all of Oliver's problems right there. Rabid Bite takes down Goreclaw. Luminous Bonds takes care of the Hydra, and just like that, it's just a Vampire Neonate for Josh.
Yeah, and we can see why Oliver elected to not put the Thornhide Wolves into combat with Goreclaw. It's just so everything his deck does, I need to start with a creature, right? Whether it's enchanting it or whether it's using Rabid Bite to kill one of your creatures, I need to have that out as a baseline, as a first principle to begin anything else.
Oh, man, and like you mentioned it, he kept this Thornhide Wolves in play, and it has done work. It Rabid Bite to take out a creature, and now it gets suited up with the Knightly Valor, crashes on in for 6, and that's a 2/2 left over. So just like Josh has played a bunch of rares, but just like that, may be on the back foot here.
Yeah.
See if he has an answer to this very, very large wolves that Oliver is served with.
Yeah, the one thing is that his green-black deck, his post-sideboard deck here, is actually much better equipped to just fight a 6/7 creature the fairway, right? Black-blue decks, the blue creatures have good evasion. He's got some trickiness, but they don't have the size. Josh may be able to cobble together some sort of an aggressive double or triple block. Looks like here, wow.
Yeah, Josh,
nothing.
6 land and pass. So, well, certainly a lot to consider if you're Oliver, too, as you look at this board. Both players at 12 life. Oliver, of course, is up a game. If he wins this one, he will be into day 2 at 6-0. But this one's going to be interesting. Oliver sets down his cards here. We'll see what he wants to go from here. So, well, this has been a good one. Josh had these big creatures. So when you're playing a deck like this, you're playing this black-green deck, and you play these big threats. Goreclaw, very scary. The Hydra threatens to take over the game if left unchecked. But now they get answered. How do you kind of, it seems like you've probably played your strongest cards. How do these green-black decks, get back into the game from here?
Well, the fact that he's chosen to be on the draw makes me feel like, Josh wants to win by basically Oliver petering out, right? That Josh is going to continue to be able to add large threats to the board, trade off 1-for-1, and then take advantage with something like Blood Divination, right, to get ahead on a few cards.
Wow.
Interesting.
Well, Oliver has plans of his own, and it involves Oakenforming a token. So, yeah, this green-white deck, we talked about there's kind of different versions of it, and this is a version with a lot of enchantments, and Oakenform on the night, well, that'll go down to the Strangling Spore. So, sort of a 2-for-1 there for Josh. I mean, of course, that token was sort of an add-on for Oliver, but he is able to get in there, and, he is petered out now. He's out of cards.
Right, so Oliver's out of cards. The problem is right in front of Josh, right? He's got the Neonate that's kind of giving him some time here. He just needs to be able to put together basically whether it's a removal spell like Murder or enough power to get into a block with the Thornhide Wolves. But he doesn't have all the time in the world. I mean, 6 can't take 6 forever.
Yeah, I mean, that Strangling Spores was a big play to keep him in the game so that Oakenform didn't just, give Oliver 2 giant threats that he couldn't be dealt with. But looks like the Wolves is going to serve again. It's pretty big. Josh considering what to do here.
If the life totals are right, this is a somewhat of... Oh, he has something. Wow.
2 mana. Abnormal Endurance. Okay, so, well, that's not exactly what you want, right? Because that's going to do 5. And then he gets another trigger from the Skeleton Archer when it comes back into play. Unfortunately, it only adds up to 6. What a draw, though.
Might we see him combine it with something like another copy of Strangling Spores here on end step? That
would be big. Yeah, absolutely. You called it. Strangling Spores takes down the Wolves. So you said he was equipped to deal with a 6/7, and you were right. That was all in all pretty good situation. Of course, Oliver drawing that Stag is quite the top deck for him, and now Josh in a top deck situation of his own, but a little bit of time at least.
Right, and the Neonate's going to buy him a little bit of time to draw into another threat. What you need, essentially, are 2 creatures that threaten to at least trade for the Stag in combat. So Josh has the 1 right now in the Skeleton Archer. That's, of course, going to get tapped down by the Stag's trigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the Neonate would have to throw itself in front of the Spider, so Oliver keeps the Spider back. The Stag does come in, though. Josh down to 4. Well, I guess back up to 5 here.
Right, and it actually works out pretty well from a timing perspective that Josh is going to go up to 6 from the Neonate, down to 3, and then the next turn it'll be able to chump and put him up to 4.
Right.
So Josh looks like at least 2 more draw steps, basically, to find an answer. Unless
he's got some time, and Druid of the Cow not exactly changing that too much from Oliver. I mean, it does unlock, I guess, an additional point of damage in theory if the skeleton goes away here. So Josh looks like he has finally drawn something to play.
Whatever's 5 mana looks pretty good at this point.
Well, Rock's Oracle. That's not bad.
Yeah, about as good as it gets, right? It's not only something that threatens to trade for the Stag, but it gets him deeper into his deck.
Another Neonate.
And finds another Neonate. And Oliver's only at 8 life.
Yeah,
so.
That's something we haven't really taken note of here. This Neonate, we've talked about how it's kept Josh Utter-Leyton alive. Well, it's also very slowly bleeding out on Oliver, too. And that was a great series of draws there for Josh, who still has 2 mana left over to activate the Neonate he does have in play that's not summoning 6. So just like that, things might have swung around a little bit here.
You get Carpal Tunnel operating the advantage bar on this one right now, just trying to swing it back and forth.
All right, so if you're Oliver, I guess it depends on what you have in hand. He's considering his options. Wow. He's drawn something. Oh, man. Well, if one stag is good, two stags are better. And just like that, well, suddenly these neonates might be the most threatening thing in the battlefield.
Yeah, still, you got to feel pretty good about Josh's situation here with two neonates that are kind of plinking down.
Yeah.
Although if he doesn't have anything and Oliver makes kind of an ambitious attack, they may have to enter combat. Or at least one might.
Yeah, double stag triggers from Oliver, too. Able to tap down Josh's two best creatures, so he's going to need something. Looks like he's got something. Yeah, Bristling Boar, that's what you need. When you have these two neonates in play, all you want is time, and, at this point, any creature equals time.
Any creature would be fine, but specifically one that's capable of trading off for one of the Star Crown Stags is exactly what the Doctor ordered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now even if Oliver were to attack with both of the Stags, tap two of the creatures, Josh has a block and probably maybe a chump block, or he could just risk something like Titanic Growth. But either way, Josh not really any danger of dying this turn, and Oliver's once attractive looking attack now looks like maybe a trade kind of deal, and once you start trading off stags, you've lost all the momentum in terms of being able to set up a lethal attack next turn.
Yeah, we talked a lot about being good on the front foot, and that's where Oliver was for a long time, but now he is not. That Rock's Oracle off the top into the Bristling Boar just gave Josh new life, and these neonates are going to make sure he makes the most of it. So Oliver doing a bunch of math here, and we'll see what he ultimately decides to do. I'm sure it's dependent on that card in his hand, but with two neonates threatening to activate, Josh is just a couple turns away from draining Oliver out.
Yeah, and we talked about it before, right? When both players draw those 8th, 9th lands, do you have something to do with the lands that are in play? The Rock's Oracle is great because it gets you into potentially playing two things in a turn. The neonates are great because you're constantly being able to utilize that mana for a repetitive effect. So Josh's deck really well equipped in these sorts of mid-game situations.
All right, well, here we see the attack. The stags come in. They tap down two creatures from Josh Utter-Leyton. Bristling Boar is available to block. He could also put the other creatures in front. So do you play around Titanic Growth here?
I think Bristling Boar is going to get into combat here.
Right.
Josh really wants, the longer this game goes, the better it appears to be for him. The real question is, do you want to line up a chump block with one of the vampire neonates, or do you risk potentially dying to, it has to be exactly Titanic Growth, right? Because Mighty Leap only threatens 5 damage, and of course Josh has the ability to gain 2 life this turn. So my instinct here would be just to line up a block with the Bristling Boar. I think if my opponent had Titanic Growth, they would have made a more aggressive attack.
Right, they would have swung out with that giant spider, for instance.
Great play, Josh Utter-Leyton. Because you agree with me, so I think it's a great play.
Well, no,
obviously.
It makes sense, right? If he has Titanic Growth, he probably swings with another creature representing lethal, and it turns out he just has a land. So Josh falls to 1, but that might have turned the tides right there, because he's right back up to 3. Oliver is down to 5. Oliver has to worry about blocking himself now. So if you're Josh here, you can attack. I'm not sure if he will, but it's an option.
You can. Not much incentive to do it. You know, you're just so likely to win the game with the vampire neonates anyway that.
And Daggerback Basilisk means that all of a sudden Oliver needs something extremely good off the top, or we are off to a game 3 here in our time walk match. We'll see if he's able to find something. He's not scooping them up immediately, so he's at least thinking about it.
Could have boarded in that one Mighty Leap. That would do it right here.
Yeah, that would do it. Yeah, Druid of the Cow, probably not going to do it. Down to 3 from the neonates. Well, it's not going to end this turn that we know of. Neonates can put Oliver down to 1.
Right. And we see, again, we talk about Flood as something that can occur in Sealed Deck.
Right.
Oliver's deck doesn't deal with Flood very well. Doesn't have a lot of ways to get around it. He tries to get around that by playing 16 lands, but if you draw 9 of the 16 lands, the 7th, 8th, 9th land just have no value.
Yeah, and that's what we saw there. He just wasn't able. Josh was able to use all that extra mana to activate those neonates every turn, and here comes one right on time again. Oliver, though, with a 2-drop this time around. That'll help. Oresco Swiftclaw, pretty aggressive even. A 3-1 here. Lines up pretty well against the neonate.
Yeah, and important to note, right, we talked about how Oresco Swiftclaw, Oliver correctly identifying that Josh doesn't appear to be the kind of deck that easily deals with a Resco Swiftclaw. He hasn't showed a bunch of Elvish Rejuvenators and Doom Dissenters and reassembling Skeletons. So, a Resco Swiftclaw, especially in conjunction with something like Pegasus Courser, looks particularly strong.
Yeah, Pegasus Courser, we've seen it just be one of the most powerful cards all day long. It takes, essentially it's a combat trick every turn for your best creature, and oh, by the way, it's a 1/3 flyer too.
Right. Yeah, 1/3 flyers for 3 traditionally haven't needed that strong of abilities to be playable.
Right.
But that obviously one of the best triggers you could possibly imagine on a common.
Well, this looks like a much more aggressive draw from Oliver too. He gets in for 4 damage there, and now he has the stag. So Josh Utter-Leyton with nothing but a Neonate activation here gets him back a little bit of life, but he's just falling far, far behind on board.
Yeah, really wants to have something like a Spores here for the Stag or a Skeleton Archer. Needs something that is highly interactive. And that can't just be kind of a 4/4 creature at this point, right? You're taking too much and be too far behind. So this is a big turn here for Josh Utter-Leyton.
Yeah, this is going to be very possibly a defining moment of this game, and it looks like he does have the Strangling Spores. So the Stag falls by the wayside. Josh Utter-Leyton stems the bleeding for now. That is a pretty important. Of course, now he is tapped out. Shields are down for Oliver too, and we know how many powerful enchantments he has in his deck.
One thing I love is that Oliver chose to play here in Game 3 after Josh choosing to draw in Game 2. So one of them is wrong for sure, right? That's saying I don't respect your ability to choose who should go first.
Well, it can throw you off if your opponent says, you know what, I'm going to draw this time around. And you start questioning your own decision to always play. But I think if you're playing a Resco Swiftclaw in your deck, you always want to be on the play. Militia Bugler here for Oliver. Let's see if he's able to hit off of it. It does. It finds a Druid of the Cow. It's still a card, better than nothing here. Adds to the board, crashes in for 4 more damage in the air. Josh Utter-Leyton falls down to 11. Well, that Strangling Spore is kept in around last turn, but he's still going to need to impact the board again as Oliver continues to add power. All right, let's see what Josh wants to do here. What's kind of the best, do you want a creature here now that you have the Stag off the board, or is he looking for removal?
Well, I think that.
Well, that's a 4/2.
Yeah, either one of those kind of has the Militia Bugler under control.
Right.
The issue is that Pegasus Courser. That's a long-term problem for Josh Utter-Leyton. He's going to have to get that off the board or find some sort of flying defense in the form of Giant Spider or something of that nature. So
yeah, and that long-term is quickly threatening to become a now problem, as this attack might bring him down to 7 life. He does have access to the Skeleton Archer in his deck, which would have been probably the perfect draw there to take out the Swiftclaw and the Bugler, but just a 4/2 to threaten a trade instead. Not exactly where he wants to be. So, and a Blanchwood armor for Oliver too. It's not the best Blanchwood armor ever. It's a +2/+2, but in this circumstance, that is pretty good.
Yeah, really nice play here. So Blanchwood armor makes the Militia Bugler into a 4/5. That precludes the possibility of kind of a nice block for Josh or a trade. He has only a chump block available, and the Pegasus Courser is going to send a Resco Swiftclaw to the air. So Oliver using the Blanchwood armor to make life very uncomfortable for Josh, and he is very far on the back foot.
Yeah, it's not the world's best Blanchwood armor, but in this situation, it seems very good. Do you think Josh is priced into a chump block here?
I think he's going to have to block. Yeah, I just don't think you can take 8 damage this turn and go to 3 and have any chance of winning the game.
Yeah.
He actually has the tools in his hand. Looks like a copy of Murder and another copy of Strangling Spores, if I'm seeing correctly. But he just needs to both find a swamp and the time to deploy these things.
Time is the big one, and Oliver doesn't look like he might be giving it to him. Druid of the Cow, not the most threatening thing, but it looks like a Luminous Bond's in Oliver's hand. So anything Josh does deploy here could be in trouble. It's going to be a close one. If he can get rid of the Pegasus Courser, though, things start to change. If you have the cards to deal with the Pegasus Courser, then you can deal with the Bugler, and then, things get a little easier. But instead, just a pass here from Josh with access to 6 mana for combat tricks.
Yeah, and a 4 is kind of heartbreaking here, right? Really needs that second swamp to be able to cast Murder.
Yeah, and Oliver, we'll see how aggressive he chooses to play it here. We'll see what he has in his hand if he really wants to get aggressive. We know that there's a double black card stuck in Josh's hand, but to Oliver, he's Josh is representing a lot of possible combat tricks here.
Yeah, not a big risk to playing Luminous Bonds here, though, right? It certainly appears on its face like it's going to lead to a lethal attack, and even if it doesn't, it's probably leading to at least 5 points of damage coming in, and then even chip damage from Druid of the Cowl becomes fairly relevant in terms of the ability to finish things off. So for me, I'm going for the gusto here.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not going to fear the 6 open mana.
Yeah, I mean, even something like Naturalize, so we've seen it in the, it's something to get rid of the Luminous Bonds. We've seen people in the previous rounds today try to play around, but in this case, even doing that would only unlock a 4-2, which isn't very good against the 4-5 Militia Bugler. So Oliver 2 in a commanding position here, looking very strong to lock his spot up in day 2 if he can finish this off over Josh Utter-Leyton. Oliver is thinking about how he wants to play this here, probably going through all the possible things in his head that Josh could have.
I actually think Josh might have priority here, and Josh is wondering whether he should cast Strangling Spores on the Pegasus Courser prior to combat. I think he may also have a copy of Naturalize, so he's thinking, am I going to Strangling Spores this Courser, then Naturalize the Luminous Bonds, and then set up a block potentially on Swiftclaw? Josh, as you see, he's kind of tapping the table here, trying to figure out exactly how do I get out of this mess.
Well, that's a good start. If he's able to use 2 spells here that do something, then all of a sudden, something like a Swamp off the top might be enough to stabilize the board here. So, yeah, he chooses to play it as he thinks it over. I mean, he's got some options, which if you're Oliver, has to worry you at least a little bit. Of course, you're still in a commanding position, so I'm sure he'll be okay. Well, this game is really, we've seen today in the rounds we've covered, sort of the height of a Oresco Swiftclaw in turn 2 and the depths of it. We've seen it be very, very good, like in this matchup, and not so great in some others, but Oliver 2 has made great use of it. And here we see Josh has decided on a play. He is eyeing that Strangling Spores. Yeah, does use it to shoot down the Courser. So step 1 of the stabilization plan for Josh here. Now we are, looks like we're into combat. The team turns sideways for Oliver 2, although that Militia Bugler probably shouldn't. There we go. So he even serves with a Druid of the Cow here. And there is the Naturalize you spoke of. That unlocks the 4-2 as a blocker. Trades it with the Swiftclaw. And Josh takes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's not dead quite yet.
And he swamps.
Child of the Night.
That's torturous.
That's, all right. Lifelink from the Child of Night keeps him alive for the moment. Oh, Oliver, though, looks like he's just drawing nothing but gas over there. He's on 5 lands only, has nothing but good cards in hand. Looks like he's eyeing Oaken Form, thinking it through here. And he does go for it on the Druid of the Cow. All right, so that Druid of the Cow is quite large, as is the Militia Bugler, and that's a Rabid Bite to end the game right there. Taking it down, Oliver 2 with the Green-White Enchantments deck. Pegasus Courser was very good there. Josh Utter-Leyton boards into green-black, takes game 2, gets himself back into the match, but just not quite able to turn the corner there in that final game. And just like that, Oliver 2 into day 2 at 6-0. So welcome back to the booth. I'm Corbin Hostler. I'm joined by Paul Rietzel. Those were some actually very interesting games we watched. Saw a lot of different strategies and way it can be played with different colors, different versions of green-white. Lots of great stuff there. What stood out to you from those matches?
Well, I think it's the Ballad of Oresco Swiftclaw. I think that I talked about earlier me being surprised that Martin Dang had in his deck in a post-sideboard game against Sam Black. No such surprise here with Oliver 2's deck, both because of how important it was to his particular strategy with the Auras and the Pegasus Coursers, but because it actually happened to match up pretty well against Josh's deck. So that's the beauty of limited Magic, the changing valuations of cards based on context and situation.
Yeah, the Ballad of Oresco Swiftclaw. I like that. That's M19 limited for you, everybody. Well, that was great. That'll do it for round 6 here at Grand Prix Minneapolis. I'm Corbin Hostler. It's Paul Rietzel. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll be back.